Hi, everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal. Today is our last episode of season 5. I can't believe it. We doubled up this season and did about 28 episodes. Demetrius and I didn't even know that we went so long because we were having so much fun. But it's time to take a break, figure out how we want to elevate in season 6, and then come back with a bang. So today we're going to discuss some fun topics such as Minecraft drama, Comic-Con announcements, and just a few goodbyes to season 5. And let's get started. Oh man, 28 episodes. Can you believe it?
Man, I was looking back because we have all the notes and stuff, and I was like, how long is this document? It just goes on forever. Like, it takes like a minute or two for my computer to just load the document because it's so long.
Yeah, that's usually a sign when I start to scroll and it's like stumbling. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
we're getting a little long, but I think we're just having a good time. There's a lot of stuff happening in the news, and we record these once a week, so it's not like a huge impact on our schedule with our work that we do with our clients and things like that. And we're having a good time with it. So, but it's definitely double what we did last season, and we're going to try to trim that down. I think 28 episodes
Yeah.
is a lot of episodes for a season, but it was fun doing it.
Yeah. And also, as we got deeper into summer, I realized, like, okay, this is why people take a little time off during the summer. There's a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
stuff going on.
hard. Yeah, it's definitely challenging where you kind of get to a point where you're like, oh man, I got a lot of editing to do and things like that. And we didn't really take a break. So I think it's fine. We'll take a break in the early fall. And then when we come back, we'll have a great season 6 to kick off. We got some cool interviews lined up actually, which I
Oh,
think will be
yeah.
really fun. One of them is a venture capitalist that is going to come in, and we're going to ask him all the questions that we're always thinking about when it comes to funding and raising money and all that kind of good stuff. So that will be on the docket. But today, let's talk about some Minecraft drama. Ooh. So
Oh,
what's
yeah.
actually really interesting, D, is before we jump into that, you had mentioned like Minecraft is such it was maybe 2 or 3 episodes back, or even more than that, that the metaverse, and you were like, Minecraft is just like knee deep in the metaverse. And I started thinking about it,
Hmm.
and after reading this article, I realized it's probably the closest thing you can get to a true metaverse. You have young people, old people, developers, non-developers. Everyone is like engaging and playing. You've got people hosting their own servers. It's like real. It's got an economy in it, right? It's a pretty impressive platform, and it took what 20 years to get to that point, right?
Yeah, it's actually been around like 12, I want to say. Like, it feels like it's been around for much
Ever.
longer than that. But yeah, it came out around 2010 or so, and I think one of the things that would kind of like complete the package is if they had like a hub where you can move between different servers, because that's one of
Yeah.
the things right now is that like um I use when I play on servers, it's usually like 3 or 4, maybe 5 people. They're all close friends or family members, but you don't do a lot of like meeting a whole lot of new people. And maybe if it was on more of a public server or something like that, then that might happen more. But if you could like take your character and move from like through a hub from one server to another, then I think that would like really open up the experience for them.
Yeah, that's like next level.
Yeah.
That's like something I can imagine the conversations happening internally at Mojang.
Yeah. And I think that interestingly, like Minecraft is one of the best run gaming platforms, like or franchises. I guess it's a single game really, but they have updates coming up. And historically they've done a really good job of keeping their users engaged and making everybody happy and having really good outreach. So it's unusual for them to have this kind of thing where they have a potential misstep that's causing a lot of drama, as you mentioned.
Yeah, so let's talk about what actually happened. So this has to do around moderation of private servers. So basically, the players are rebelling against Mojang because they're bringing moderation policies into private servers. So Mojang, the maker of Minecraft, dropped an update version 1.19.1 for the Java edition. And what it is players can now report one another for inappropriate messages, behavior, even on private servers. Um, and basically, what they're saying is this type of behavior will get you banned. Stuff like hate speech, bullying, harassing, sexual solicitation, and threatening others. Um, Stopping right there for a second before I actually go on and talk a little bit more in depth. from the outside, from someone who's not hosting a private server, I mean, I we have one that we connect to and play on and stuff. It doesn't seem like a big deal right now. Like just that particular announcement is like, okay, well, that would make sense. Don't we want to stop bullying, threatening others, sexual harassment, that kind of stuff? Correct?
Yes, the devil's in the details, like most things. So, uh, the issue, one of the biggest issues, is that when you're doing a private servers, it's not plug and play like it might be on some other platforms. You actually have to download separate software and install it. It helps if you know a little bit of Java. You have to edit like text files in order to get things set up, and then you might have to install a bunch of plugins and all kinds of stuff. So it's not something that you set up very easily and quickly. Minecraft does have a platform for that. It's called Realms,
Uh-huh.
and I don't think anybody looks at Realms and thinks to themselves, "Oh yeah, I don't think anybody's upset that this kind of moderation is being implemented in Realms, and I don't think that people are upset that moderation, it's like at its core base, is being entered into private servers is really that much of a concern. It's more the way in which it's being implemented.
So the way it's set up basically on this update is that Minecraft moderators can then determine what follow-up action there should be, if any, including player bans. And Mojang said it won't be monitoring online chat or using bots to moderate, but players fear this new tool could be abused um, and cause trouble on private servers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so apparently, players could conspire to maliciously report someone on one private server and then get them banned from an entire game. And that seems to be the issue. So let's stop there now for a second. So if that is the case, that to me just sounds like a bug fix, right? That just sounds like a software update. That doesn't sound like a ethical debate between what should or shouldn't be allowed on the Minecraft servers, right?
Well, there's a couple things going on. Is number one is there is. I think one of the biggest issues is if you get banned in one of these servers, and it is a blanket ban across all servers. So you're not just banned from that one server, like, oh, you misbehaved in Brian's private server. Now you can't go into Brian's private server anymore. You
Mhm.
can't go into any private servers. So that seems like a bit of an overreach. It might be like it makes sense to ban them from that private server, or maybe give them a timeout or something. But like having like a full account ban from all Minecraft servers is basically just like completely like eliminating that player entirely. Now they can potentially work around it by buying a new copy of the game and setting up a new account, things like that, if they're not doing
Uh-huh.
IP tracking and stuff. But it is kind of a thing that I don't know that anybody was asking for on private servers. And the that blanket ban is the biggest thing. The other thing is that there's a certain lack of specificity. You know, anytime you're talking about like a full account ban,
Uh-huh.
and they'll say like it'll be for these types of things, and then it's very broad as far as
Yeah.
like what is considered bullying and harassment and hate speech and things like that. Um, then there's also the fact that this exists in like across multiple cultures, and what one person might consider harassing in one culture might not be in another. So there could be, for example, we were working on a metaverse platform that went cross culture, and people in some cultures didn't like getting hugs. So they were like asking, like, can we like get rid of or at least turn off the hug animation because I don't want to see that.
Uh-huh.
So somebody could go on, and if it's somebody from a culture that feels that way about hugging, and somebody does like a slash hug or something like that in the chat, then they could see that as harassment and they could report that, and it could become an issue. So there's a lot of things going on here, and it feels as though there are some actions in play as far as the bug fix. I mean, they were talking about security. This is cybersecurity. There are people out
Yeah.
there who are doing things who are circumventing security. So you have to figure out a way every time and you know how it is with security. Every time you squash an exploit, you kind of have to find the next exploit to squash. It just keeps going
Correct.
on. And you have things I've seen this before. And if somebody doesn't know how to set up their server as a whitelist server, and potentially there might be a way around that too, where unknown people can just pop into your private server, file a bunch of false reports against whoever, and then just disappear.
Mhm.
And if they had like a chat interaction, like they're not an unauthorized user, and like the owner was like, "Hey, you can't be here," and they were like, "Hey, that's harassment, and I'm going to report you," then that could be an issue too.
Yeah. So I see it like kind of in two ways here. So on one side, I totally understand where Mojang is coming from. You said like, well, this is my private server, but you are playing their game, right? So I can understand how they don't want
Sure.
the experience that somebody has on your private server to be drastically different than the experience they have on either another private server or on the primary game itself, right? You should be able to go in and do all the things you did before without feeling threatened and that kind of stuff. So they're trying to unify the user experience across the platform.
Hmm.
I also understand that as a private server owner, and I've talked to them before, like you said, it's not easy to set up. It costs money to host. You should be able to kind of control what happens within your server. I mean, people don't have to play in your server if they don't want to, right? And if you feel like people are being inappropriate, then you can manage them with
Yeah.
tools. Now, the concern coming from the private server owners is the fact that there's exploits that exist, like you mentioned, that could potentially manipulate things like the in-game chat logs and stuff like that, and then it would basically force that private server to get evaluated by Mojang, and then Mojang might shut down that server, shut down those players. So there's all these concerns coming up that they're worried about that have happened in real life and
Hmm.
and do exist. But to me, that still sounds like an engineering problem that Mojang needs to work out, and less of a an issue with trying to basically create a cohesive, fun, and safe experience for people who enjoy Minecraft.
Well, I don't even know that it needs to be an engineering problem. It could just be just change the strategy around implementation a little bit. If it was me, I would do this very simply. Don't make it an account wide ban, unless they have three strikes or something like that. For repeat offenders, fine. But for somebody who has happened a single time, then maybe not. The other thing is, because these are private servers and they feel owned by the people who manage the private server, it does cost money, even if you're running it on your own system and you're not paying. You're not paying somebody for that. You're still paying for the hardware to run it on and the electricity to run that. So it
Uh-huh.
is still, a commitment. Just involve them in the process. Just say, hey, we think this is somebody that should be banned. We're going to give you a veto opportunity. What do you think?
Mhm. Yeah.
And if they say no, go ahead and ban them, then I think that makes sense. At the same time, these private servers, there are tools to ban people. You don't really need Mojang to step in and ban people for you. You can ban them from the individual server. And, I think that if they were communicating and had these set up, then you can avoid mistakes and misunderstandings. That's one of the things that has happened across the board with many different platforms. It's one of the reasons why people are very leery about it, because they've seen kind of these weird abuses for people being banned or removed and other platforms for no good reason before. And a lot of it is because there's just too much to moderate. There's too many users out there. There's not
Mhm.
enough staff in order to do that. Mojang is located in Sweden, and what is might be culturally appropriate for somebody in Sweden or inappropriate for somebody in Sweden might be appropriate for somebody in Brazil or India or Japan. So having this kind of like a moderator in a different country making from a different culture making judgments on what is going on in another part of the world is tricky for sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Hey, just as a side note, I've heard it pronounced Mojang and Mojang. Which is correct?
Well, they're Swedish, so I think the J spell is pronounced with a like a Y. So I believe the accurate thing is Mojang.
Mojang. Okay, good to know. Yeah, I mean, I look at this and I go, this is the problem. Like if you
Mhm.
look at any metaverse that exists and you look at any platform where you have all these different people and different cultures and stuff engaging on it, this bullying, moderation, tool development for moderators, this is the problem everyone's working on right now. And it just feels a bit broad to me. I agree with you. I think it should be a little more specific. I think it should be, hey, like we noted that Bryan did something that we don't like. How do you want to handle it as the private server owner? Here's how we would handle it, but you're a private owner. Maybe you should follow these rules. Or I feel like there's a better way to have a closer relationship with those private server owners and figure out something that makes sense to them, so they don't
Yeah,
feel like they can get busted, even though they haven't done anything wrong, with these exploits and things like that. I mean, this could be fixed. I feel like this is fixable.
yeah. Well, I think that bottom line, everybody looks at this and says, all right, well, public servers or Minecraft realms, which are run by Minecraft, the servers run by Minecraft, makes perfect sense. Everybody's like, yeah, that makes absolute sense. It's their servers or it's public. You can have a bunch of different people who are strangers who are interacting with each other. For private servers, it feels as though because a lot of times there are five people who are friends in real life. Like there's not a lot of there's or maybe 10, maybe 20, but they're still all friends in real life. It's not usually like okay, a bunch of strangers coming together on the server. So it makes sense, I think, for that to get treated differently. If
Mhm.
it was me, I would maybe roll things out on public servers first and leave private servers untouched for the time being. Work out some kinks, figure things out. Maybe an account ban just applies to public servers. Maybe not so much to private servers just yet. And then kind of figure out that implementation. I don't think that it's a need to rush this.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I don't think it's necessary. But I do think that it needs to be addressed, at least verbally,
Mhm.
with private server owners very soon,
Yeah.
because you know how this stuff spirals out of control.
Yeah, I don't think they want to let this lie. I think they want to address this. And to be clear, like there are definitely griefers in Minecraft, and there are people who are abusive, and there's like it happens. But comparing the amount of what happens on Minecraft to what happens on Twitter or Facebook or any other social platform, it's just night and day. Fortnite, even or Call of Duty, where people are screaming like racial slurs left and right and saying they'll do things to your mother.
Mhm.
Like that's kind of the norm on a Call of Duty in a Call of Duty game. So this is like to me, it's like, all right, well, it seems as though it's kind of swift and harsh for a platform that is less needing of it than plenty of other platforms out in the world.
Absolutely. Well, there's something else that they're doing too. So part of this whole genre of Minecraft and some of the things that are happening. So they are banning NFTs. So they are
Mm-hmm.
not allowing the buying, selling, trading of Minecraft NFTs, Mojang. So I have my own personal feelings about this because you and I have been deeply studying and working in NFTs. So let me tell you what it actually says in the letter that was sent out by Mojang to Microsoft. I have some sections I kind of cut out here. To ensure that Minecraft players have a safe and inclusive experience, blockchain technologies are not permitted to be integrated inside our client and server applications, nor may Minecraft in game content such as worlds, skins, persona items, or other mods be utilized by blockchain technology to create a scarce digital asset. Each of these uses of NFTs and other blockchain technologies create digital ownership based on scarcity and exclusion, which does not align with Minecraft values of creative inclusion and playing together. NFTs are not inclusive of all our community and create a scenario of the haves and have nots. The speculative pricing and investment mentality around NFTs takes the focus away from playing the game and encouraging profiteering, which we think is inconsistent with the long term joy and success of our players. I would 100% agree. I actually have an idea on how they can still enter this market, but what is your take on it?
Yeah, I think it makes sense for them to do this. It doesn't really fit with like kind of the themes of Minecraft of going out there and doing the work and gathering resources and whatnot. I saw a while back somebody was advertising. This it was basically like like Decentraland, where you go in, you buy land through an NFT, and you do all these things. And it was just a Minecraft server that somebody had set up and decided to sell NFTs for bits of land.
Uh-huh.
And I think that puts Minecraft in a very concerning space if people are being defrauded by some of these people who are setting up servers and selling NFTs for platforms that could go away. It could potentially open them up to legal action. But even beyond that, it's just contrary to the entire theme of what Minecraft is as a game, where it's a sandbox we can go in and have almost complete freedom. So I'm not against NFTs in general, but I am definitely think that they have so far been implemented mostly poorly and in ways that aren't very well thought out and in ways that don't necessarily add value.
Mhm.
And it's one of the reasons why there's so much backlash around NFTs themselves when NFTs are just a back end technology. And what they're really upset about is the ways in which NFTs have been used.
Yes, and I look at it and I go, you could go and you can buy skins and that kind of stuff with Minecraft coins and things like that. I mean, you can go
Yeah.
into their store and buy stuff. So if you really wanted to integrate NFTs, you could simply have a marketplace. If people want to create NFTs, they have to submit them just like you do with the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, and then Mojang has to look at them, approve them, certify them, price them, and then place them in the marketplace. That's the only way I can imagine entering into this and keeping everything clean, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they could. I don't think that that's like a big moneymaker for them. And you have plenty of skin artists out there who will, create a skin for you, or you can copy somebody else's skin. I don't think they necessarily want to get into the business of moderating whose skin is who and having to do like DMCA claims and trying to take people's skins down if it's a copy of somebody else's skin.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's something that they want to get into.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but that's the only way I can see doing it and still
Yeah,
preserving the actual experience itself. Because like you said, you should have to go earn it. Like that's the fun part of Minecraft,
yeah,
like digging around and finding stuff and building stuff. It's not just about like, oh, I have enough money to just go buy everything I want, and then suddenly,
yeah.
it's available.
And this is also, I mean, to a large extent, this is a game for kids. I know a lot of older people like ourselves will play it from time to time, but it is something for younger kids to get in and be creative or learn even a little bit about like engineering and stuff like that with some of the redstone stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, you don't necessarily need them to start learning the ins and outs of like IP rights and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's talk about our second and final topic of today. Super fun. Comic-Con announcement. So it's been 2 years, D, since Comic-Con happened in person due to the pandemic, and this was a big event. A lot of stuff showed up. And one of the big things that happened was, just as a side note, The Rock showed up to promote Black Adam, and he was
Yep.
all dressed up and everything, and he did a Q&A. And this kid comes up and asks him a question, and he says, um, was Kevin Hart, which The Rock is like one of his best friends, right? They make fun of each other all the time online. And he said, was he jealous that you got this part and he did? And he said, oh man, absolutely. He was so jealous. And it was some like little kid, like really short little kid. And he goes, how old are you? And he starts asking the kid, and then he looks over and he goes, yeah, something like, I think you've already outgrown Kevin Hart already. And they had this funny banter back and forth because, Kevin Hart makes fun of how The Rock is just some big, muscly, like tall oof. And then The Rock makes fun of him because he's just so tiny that he can just hold him like a baby and put him on his shoulder. And so they had this whole thing going, on the live event and everything. And it was really funny. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of good stuff happened at the event. So what did you hear that was kind of exciting?
Well, there's a million things that happened, and I'm like, there's no way that we'd be able to cover it all. But
No
some
way.
interesting highlights. Looking at some of them, so like DC, I thought was interesting. The Rock showed up, was promoting Black Adam. They've been working on Black Adam for I think for something like 14 years, something like that. It's finally
Oh my
coming out.
God, really?
Yeah, yeah, it was announced. Like if you look at the announcement date, like I've seen comments saying like, "Oh, this movie's been in development for longer than I'm alive" and stuff like that. They've been working on it for a long time. The Rock's wanted to do it for a long time. It's interesting how it's going to fit in with the rest of the movies that are going on. But I'm happy for The Rock. I'm happy to see this movie come out and make its impression on the world. There should be a few different characters in there like Doctor Fate. So it'll be it'll I think it's their biggest title they have currently in development because they apparently don't have a Batman movie coming. So, or a Superman at this point in time.
Yeah. Sandman's coming soon, though, right?
Sandman is coming soon. Well, the interesting thing about the Sandman is that it's being released on Netflix rather than HBO Max, and
Ooh.
I think one of the reasons for that is number one, Neil Gaiman is show running it himself, so it's going to be as close to his vision as he wants it to be. The other thing is, looking back on it, it's another thing that's been in development for a long, long time. I mean, I think the first started working on either a movie or a show back in the '90s when the Sandman comics were still coming out. And I think that Netflix agreed to pay for it, and it happened at a time like even before HBO Max existed as a platform. So
I see.
that's one of the reasons why I think that Warner Brothers and DC partnered with Netflix in order to get it made.
Oh, I see. Okay. And then I saw actually on one of the notes that you said Shazam Fury of Gods trailer was
Yeah.
released.
So I thought the first. I don't know if you saw the first Shazam movie.
I didn't see the first one. Are you talking about the one that had what's his name? Shaquille O'Neal in it?
No, no, no. That was.
What was that? What was that movie? That
I
one.
don't
Whenever
even
I see
know.
the word Shazam, all I think about is Shaquille O'Neal from the '90s.
I think I blocked that out of my head. So the first one was a fun movie. It was kind of a kids movie, and so it might be something you might watch with Henrik or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but the new trailer looked kind of fun. It's I don't know that it's going to do the kind of business as something like Black Adam might do
Mhm.
or some of the DCU movies, but it's there. It's coming out. There's not a lot coming from DC, so there were no new Snyderverse movies. No, I imagine that he might be interested in taking a break, even if there were. So there was also no sighting of Henry Cavill, which I
Okay.
really would love to see him come back and play Superman. I thought he was a great Superman. Um, so there's a question about how much they're actually putting out. Flash is conspicuously absent with all of the things, the legal actions going on with Ezra Miller, and who knows what's new horror will be revealed soon.
Yeah.
So I think that Warner Brothers and DC are still kind of like, what do we do with this movie that's already been shot? And speaking of movies that have already been shot, the Batgirl movie, which was slated to come out later this year, was actually filmed and in editing, and they said that it was almost done. They've completely canceled and decided they're not going to release in any way, shape, or form.
Why would they do that? Like that seems crazy unless it was like terrible.
I don't know. Well, that's kind of what it sounds like, which is disappointing for all involved. I was kind of looking forward to this one. Like I saw the actress in West Side Story. I thought she was great. It has like J.K. Simmons, and it had Michael Keaton in there as coming back as Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Mm.
Someone at Warner Brothers got a hold of this movie and decided it was irredeemable. At least not without maybe a whole bunch of money spent, additional money spent on reshoots. And I guess there was some kind of, it went against some kind of mandate from a CEO about, this is what we want our movies to be. And this was kind of contrary to that. For whatever case, they spent like 70 or $80 million on this, and now they're not releasing it. So, from DC, at least for live action, it basically comes down to right now Black Adam and Shazam, and then Sandman on another platform.
Wow. Sounds like Batgirl was like Billy Walsh's Medellin.
Maybe I have no idea. I'm really curious to see it. It's one of those things where like, how bad can it be in a world in which Morbius exists? So, um, well, I don't know. I don't know if it might see the light of day at some point, but things are like oddly quiet on the DC front. They have a bunch of fires to put out. They have, I believe, their own event. I don't know if that already passed or if that's coming up, but I'm hoping that maybe more things will get announced um, before the end of the year. Otherwise, it's going to be really quiet for Marvel or for
Yeah.
DC.
Marvel's got a lot though on the docket
Yeah,
here. We can't go through all of them, but we can at least go down the list and kind of read off some of these, right?
Yeah, where DC is quiet, Marvel is the exact opposite. So they've got a couple new animated things coming out. So to start there, so they've got I Am Groot, an animated series of shorts coming out. I believe like next week or later this week, something like that.
Uh-huh.
It's early August,
That'd be cool.
and the trailer looked really cute. And it's just like I think just like shorts, like Bugs Bunny style shorts of Groot doing things like Baby Groot. They've got Spider-Man Fresh in Year, which I don't fully understand what it is yet. I haven't really seen the trailer yet, but it's an animated thing that has Spider-Man in school doing things, apparently. They've got a Marvel Zombies animated show coming out, and they've got X-Men like 94, 97, something like that. So it's a flashback to, or I think it's a sequel to the old animated X-Men series that we all used to watch in the 90s.
Mm.
So that should be fun.
Can you imagine being someone brand new into all this? And then instead of saying like, oh, there's like these 5 films, and if you catch up, there's like so many films now and adjacent films. It could be a massive list of stuff you'd have to watch just to get like up to speed on what Marvel stuff has been released.
Well, there's also just a deep well of history that you could potentially go through. And this isn't that different than like they have done a really good job of kind of replicating what happens in comics on the big screen and the small screen. It's something that I don't think that DC or anybody else has really done. Where it's like if you went out and picked up an Avengers comic today, you would have what 60 plus years of history behind that comic of like all
Yeah.
these storylines are like go back decades. So that's kind of where it is. And you can pick up and watch a movie like Shang-Chi and not know all of that history and still enjoy it. It's just if you do, then you might get more out of it. You might become more critical.
Yeah.
But regardless, some of the other big announcements for me, probably the biggest announcement, because I'm a huge fan of Daredevil,
Hmm.
is Daredevil Born Again, which is the name of, I believe it was the last arc that Frank Miller did in the 80s for Daredevil.
Nice.
Uh, they're bringing back Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio. No news yet on the other actors in from the Netflix shows. It's coming out with 18 episodes, which is a lot considering that most Marvel shows have been 6 episodes. So this should be huge. I don't know how closely they're going to follow the Born Again's comic storyline. That one was really dark and had characters dying of AIDS and people being murdered and all kinds of stuff. It
Oh
would
my
definitely
God.
be kind of an R-rated kind of thing if they followed that. Um, but and they also kind of drew from that for the third season of the Netflix Daredevil. But regardless, I'm really interested to see where they go with this. A couple other things. They have a new Guardians of the Galaxy trailer, which is not released to the public. Same thing with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. They showed a trailer at the Comic-Con, but didn't release it to the public. The directors have said that it's fine for watching it like once in a show, but if for it to stand up to repeated viewing on YouTube or something like that, they want to do a little bit more work on the VFX and stuff before it gets fully released. They announced 2 new Avengers films, which is interesting because we've gone a while now without even an Avengers film announced. Sounds like they're kind of filming back to back, so it's Avengers: The Kang Dynasty and Avengers: Secret Wars. And if you know anything about the history of the comics themselves, Kang is a very interesting, like kind of Time Lord kind of character who sets up his plots like a puppet master, spanning centuries, and then they all kind of come to the millennia. Really,
Uh-huh.
Secret Wars is a multiversal event in the comics. I think it was back in the 80s, I want to say, and then they did a new Secret Wars more recently, but it brought together pretty much every single Marvel hero into one place for this like super villain who made them do battle with each other, like almost gladiatorial style. All of this is part of what they're calling the multiverse saga, which has been a big theme for the stuff that's been going on. But the next thing coming out, and the trailer that got released, and I've watched this trailer a million times, and I know the music from it by heart now, is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Oh yeah. That's gonna be great.
Did you see this trailer?
Yeah. It looks sick.
Oh man, the trailer alone was just like it was almost worth the price of admission just for the trailer. I'm very excited to see where they go with this. Like I don't know what they're going to do about. Well, apparently they're going to have T'Challa pass away either during this movie or shortly before it. Coinciding with the the death of Chadwick Boseman, and it's already all over the trailer how much that this is kind of a film that will be in mourning.
Yeah. 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 I was wondering how they were going to pull that off. Um, it's going to be a really sad one, but hopefully they can do something that would honor him appropriately.
Yeah, yeah, I think they'll do a good job. They've got a great director behind it, and they've got a great production crew. So I think the big question I have for Marvel, where DC is like, hey, where are you? What are you doing? Marvel is they're putting out 3 to 4 movies a year, and I thought coming out of the pandemic where some things got delayed, so they got pushed into later years. Maybe we're still seeing the effect of that. So I think we're now seeing 5 TV series a year. And the question came up for me: is Marvel doing too much? Are they putting out too much content? What do you think?
I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. Because I feel like with the way streaming is and the appetite for content that people have right now, I think if you look at, in theater, streaming, shorts, all those things, it just keeps the audience super engaged. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
the people who are people who love Marvel, they just want more and more and more. So as long as the production quality is really high and the storylines are really good and everything's really tight, I feel like it's exactly what they should be doing if they want to kind of pull ahead of the pack and really kind of dominate the theater experience and the streaming experience in the next 3 to 4 years. I think it's the right thing to do. Now they could space all this stuff out. I mean, it's not like they're going to age out any of this content, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, so one of the reasons why it kind of popped in my head is not just the amount of content, but I feel like some of the movies that they've and TV shows they put out recently haven't really held up to what was Phase Four Marvel. So like Avengers Endgame and those kinds of movies. And I think that's ultimately a bit of an unfair comparison. I mean, though that was the peak, that was the high watermark. So you can't really expect, as they're ending one saga and they're launching another, for it to always be at that level.
Mm-hmm.
Like I loved shows like Miss Marvel. I thought it was incredibly charismatic and fun, and you had these awesome characters. But at the same time, the villains were very cookie cutter and underdeveloped. And even if it meant going from 6 episodes to 7 or 8 episodes in order to have more fully developed villains, I would have absolutely taken that. Same thing with like Eternals. I actually really liked Eternals. A lot of people don't like it, but I also remember watching it and thinking to myself, this could have easily been a TV series that went, 8 episodes an hour each, so they could really develop everything, all the different storylines they have going on.
I think that's one of
Um,
the challenges right now in Hollywood is deciding whether or not you want to make something a TV series or make it a feature
yeah.
film. I mean, I was even listening to some screenwriters on a podcast talk about how they look at their ideas and their creative endeavors, and they now have to decide: am I going to try to like push to sell a series, or am I going to try to push to sell, a one time film that can get released on one of these streaming platforms? Because one of the things they realize is that it's actually quite easy if you have a really really good story to sell the
Mhm.
2 hour movie. Like there's so many places to sell it to. If it's really good, the likelihood of selling it, boom, done, one and done, it's over
Yeah.
with. But a lot of writers really want to extend out their thoughts and their creativity across, like you said, 5, 16, 18 episodes over 2 seasons. And for a studio to pull the trigger on that, it's a lot more scrutiny.
Well, I think that it ultimately, one of the things is for Marvel and Disney, if you're making a Marvel movie, you're talking about a theatrical release. I don't think they've done any direct to video Marvel
Yeah.
or direct to streaming Marvel movies. It's always been in a kind of series format.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the question. And I also, from what I hear, I don't have any direct knowledge of this, is that for a show like or a movie like Eternals, it was driven by budget. And if they're going to do things with these huge planet wide effects and things, then it was basically a theatrical release budget. So that's what led to that decision making where it, and, the director was a film director. So I don't know that she had a lot of experience doing TV. Don't know if she was interested in doing TV, but that was definitely a factor.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just from your perspective, from a user experience perspective, like, do you see, what are you, do you see are the key points of when you're trying to make a decision on whether or not something should be like a series versus just a film?
Well, I think it needs to be. I think it should be determined by the story itself, the needs of the story. Is this a story that will do better with more time to let the characters develop and let the story breathe? In which case, it should be a series. And if it is something a little bit more self-contained, then it should be a movie. I think that realistically, things like budget constraints and schedules and things like that help to drive whether or not it's going to be one or the other. Not to mention the amount of revenue they hope to get from it. Like if it's a
Yeah.
mainline like Avengers plot line, then it's probably never going to be a TV series. It's always going to be a theatrical release.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, a lot of good stuff happening here, D. I mean, this is going to be a pretty exciting next couple of years. A lot of great content. I think everyone's kind of elevating their game, and to some extent, even though Netflix is having its issues, I do see a lot of the other streaming platforms. Sounds like they're trying to step in and purchase some of this content and get it on their platforms, and it's just once again another exciting time for TV and for theater. I mean, I know the theater numbers aren't back fully yet, which totally understandable. But they could be in the next couple of years.
I think theater numbers are if they're not back, they're very close to it. I mean, you had Spider Man made, I think is in the top 2 or 3 all time for movies. The just came out this past December. Top Gun Maverick is making a ton of money. I
Top
think
Gun
theaters
Maverick,
are,
$1 billion, I think, in
yeah.
theater. Yeah,
The Batman made a bunch of money, even though I didn't really care for it as a movie. But um, somebody's going to get upset at that.
exactly.
But I think theaters are doing pretty well. We've got a bunch of theatrical movies coming from Comic Con. One of them was Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you saw that trailer.
I did not. I did not watch that one yet.
I am cautiously optimistic. I think that in the age of Critical Role and Legend of Vox Machina and some of these Dungeons and Dragons properties having success,
Uh-huh.
that maybe they've figured out how to make a good Dungeons and Dragons movie. I never even watched the old one from like 2000. Like my friends told me that it was just a painful experience, so I avoided it. But we'll see. Somebody's banking on this, and a lot of different fantasy now, thanks to I think Lord of the Rings first, and then Game of Thrones, which interestingly are also have new releases coming out. Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings, Rings of Power. Game of Thrones is being put out a new Game of Thrones. What was it?
Is it a prequel?
Prologue series,
Oh,
I
prologue.
think. Yeah, it's Age of Dragons, Ring of. I don't know what it is. Something Dragons. Game of Thrones that will be on HBO, and then there's even Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series is coming out for Amazon too. So a lot of genre content coming out on these platforms.
Yeah, it's like I said, exciting times. I feel like this is the time to be an actor, actress. Um, this is the time basically to be in the entertainment industry if that's your passion, right?
Yeah,
Like I think we're going to look back in time and say there was a 10 or 15-year period where there were so many shows and movies and series happening. That was the time to enter this business.
yeah, it definitely seems like a bit of a golden age. Just if nothing else, for the amount of content being made. It's as much as people are complaining about the death of cinema. There is more cinematic features, cinematic material being produced now than any other time in history.
And there's more studio space being opened up as well. Like I read about a couple
Mhm.
of different studio spaces opening up in LA, in New York, other places because people don't
Atlanta,
have what's that?
Atlanta,
Atlanta. Yeah, they just don't have enough space to shoot all these
yeah,
series. So they're creating more real estate basically to do this. So it's an interesting time. But hey, I think this is a wrap to season 5 for us, D. I mean, this has been super fun. I don't know what you want to say, but like season 5, all these episodes, so many different topics, so much exciting stuff going on. It's nice to be able to take a break, but at the same time, I always miss this when we're not doing it.
yeah. At the same time, like it's probably a good. I mean, your son's out of school, and we've got some other things coming up on our own. But it's also a great time for us to really take a look at what we're doing with the podcast and make some strides with it.
Yeah, and I definitely have listened to what people have either said to us who listen to the podcast or just the numbers and things. And I can see what people like the most and what they kind of like the least and that. And we're going to try to adjust that for season 6. And I believe at season 6, we will hit our 100th episode. So,
Wow.
yeah, pretty crazy. We started this during the pandemic and we keep going because we enjoy it, right? So, thank you all, everyone, for taking the time to listen to us today and also for listening to us throughout the entire season 5. We really appreciate it. We'll be posting links to many of the sources we referenced on Twitter, so you can find us and follow us at the X Podcast 1. That's the X Podcast number 1. If you like this podcast, found it interesting or informative, helps us a great deal if you subscribe or leave a review on whatever platform you use. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you all next season.